Football in Focus, formerly Shane's Rib Shack, and also Kickback Jack's Sports Restaurant. Now the new digs at Teed Up Indoors on Battleground Avenue, top indoor golf facility in Triad. Teed Up Indoors, good to be here this evening on Greensboro Sports Radio and GreensboroSports.com. And first off the tee tonight, Mike Fanning here to give us some Grimsley football news. Last week's win, got the big win over Mount Tabor. And how about the sophomore quarterback face on Brandon? How did he do last week? Let's talk with Brandon first of all. He's the team leader, sophomore, but the team leader.
Yeah, he is a team leader, and I think, overall, you look at the Mount Tabor game and what the Whirlies wanted to do was kind of establish an identity, come right out of the box and establish an identity. And one of the big questions about what that identity would look like is behind whose center. New center, new quarterback. Really, all the other moving parts are the same for the Whirlies. So I know there was a lot of eyes on Brandon. He had some ups and downs, but boy, throws for 141 yards, two touchdowns through the air in the fourth quarter to really put the game away. Another 2 touchdowns on the ground, stayed poised and consistent. He's only 15. Coach Brown's going to live with the mistakes, but there was much more to like than to not against a very talented Mount Tabor defense that returned 9 of 11 starters.
What about, you look at the wide receivers, Terrell Anderson's out there wide out, over 100 yards, I think, receiving, very good in the kick return department. What about his efforts last week? Because I know he got off to a good start, and he just committed to NC State a couple weeks ago, and now he's feeling good about things. What about Anderson, the job he did?
Well, 81 yards on a safety. Mount Tabor was forced to take a safety on an errant punt. And on that safety punt, Terrell Anderson takes the ball 81 yards down to the 11-yard line to really set up a Grimsley touchdown and put that game away. And I think as this season progresses, you're just going to have to play keep away with Terrell Anderson. He's so special in the return game. For some reason, they kept kicking to him 195 yards. In just the return game, Andy. So you got to play keep away. And then, by the way, make special grabs at key points, his touchdown grab, the full extension in the end zone. You're going to have to play keep away with him. And by the way, Alex Taylor's a talent out there
number
as
two,
well.
Man, kind of talk about Alex Taylor, 27 yards receiving, not quite as many yards as Anderson, but again, I'm sure as the season goes on, it'll balance out some, and also is a focus more sometimes on Anderson. That opens things up for Alex. Well, Alex, the job he did. He also punted, I would think, too.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is getting that identity. What are they going to look like? Because you're losing a huge tight end in Nolan Albright, who graduated. He's on to bigger and better things at the University of Northwestern. So who is going to, we knew that, look, on the offensive side with those two guys, there's more stars in the Milky Way. Who is going to fill in for your tight end position? Well, Howerton comes out, catches a big out pass for 20 yards. Taylor, Anderson, yes, they made big plays. Cato's coming back this week against Roseville. So, again, it's just distributing the ball to all this talent they have out on the wings.
I'm going to ask that question about the receivers. You got Anderson, you got Taylor, you mentioned Howerton, DJ Howerton. Others that are going to fill some roles. What about this Dees kid? Is the Dees kid involved right now? And you mentioned that Cato's coming back this week. Those guys get involved. What about these other receivers beside the top two? Because those guys get most of the attention, sometimes almost all the attention, but the other guys are getting involved too.
Well, absolutely. Dees just targeted twice in this game. Look for him to be opened up. I think he just had 2 targets, but he just had 1 catch for 12 yards. I think what you're going to see is Mitchell Summers out of the backfield. Yeah. He caught a couple big balls. Howerton's going to get more involved as well. And then Cato, who couldn't suit up due to an injury, talking to Coach Brown, they expect him to be back out of the slot. They brought in a Clay Browning, who was Elon's University's tight end and slot wide receiver position coach for them. They brought him in to just focus on the slot and the tight end. And once you know it, I think as the season progresses, those are 2 position players you're going to have to watch for the Whirlies, because Anderson and Taylor, rightfully so, they get so much attention out there.
Certainly.
And they're going to be doubled all game long. So these guys, Summers out of the backfield, they're going to be able to find themselves on one-on-one matchups and make plays.
Let's go to Summers right quick, because we talked about Taylor and Anderson, the others, and sometimes Summers is almost the third in line of that key chain as far as the cogs go. What about Summers, the job he did running the ball, and he gets more involved as the season goes on. As you need him, you use him. He likes to be used more, so what about his job back there?
Well, I thought he did an excellent job of spinning out of tackles. Again, can't say enough about Mount Tabor's defense. Just watching it live.
Well, watching him play against Dudley in the scrimmage, their defense up front was extremely quick and extremely tough.
Very, very physical. They were well prepared. They knew you're going to have to put multiple bodies on Summers to bring him down, and they did. They did a great job of gang tackling, but Summers is so strong, and he's got such great balance, he can spin out of that. So he did go for 95 yards, but what I was most impressed with caught a couple balls out of the
You said
backfield.
something. Let me guess on this. I think I read your article. You said something on the article. I'm going to jump on this right quick. The blocking ability. The blocking maybe back. The blocking he did as a running back, set holes, giving the quarterback time to throw the passes. The job he did there.
I thought you hit the nail right on the head. I thought it was something that was overlooked in this game is the job Summers did in the pass protection. Because again, you got a young quarterback, processing quickly, first start, right? A lot going through his head, has to let plays develop. This is kind of a reworked offensive line. It's not an inexperienced offensive line, but it's kind of reworked. So in your first game going against a great Mount Tabor pass rush, could you give the quarterback a little extra time to throw? Summers did that so well. So, he's going to catch balls. He's going to run like a beast. And now he's going to be a real asset in the pass protection game. That's a dude right there.
No doubt. And it
that's
shows
a
he's
dude.
more than just a runner. He's all those other things you mentioned. He does those so well, and those are so important about getting a complete, balanced offense. Well, let me jump on this now. What about the defense? Bryce Davis, name out there, pretty solid, about 12 tackles. I'm sure he got a sack, some big plays. Talk about the job he did and the other guys. What did they do?
Well, I know we started this segment talking about the offense, but when I sat down with Darryl Brown before the season, he said, hey, we're going to rely on this defense. I know the offense, rightfully so, with Brandon being such highly recruited and these wide receivers committing, but really it's going to be the defense that is, the core of this group, especially when you got a new quarterback who's going to make mistakes. So this defense, and you mentioned him, Bryce Davis, looks so sharp. And I think steel sharpens steel. The cornerbacks for the Whirlies, they go against these talented wide receivers every day in practice. And I think it's made the defensive backs even, not that they weren't great to begin with, but I think it gives them even more motivation to go in and stop the talent that they're going to see here in Metro 4A. There's great wide receivers, but the cornerbacks played really well. Bryce Davis, what can you say? Interception, strip sack, fumble, had I think I'm trying to look at my notes here, but he had a bunch of tackles. They had five sacks. Yeah.
Here's the big question: where's he going to college at? I keep seeing all this stuff on Twitter. Where's he going to go to school? Because there's so much talk about. We've already seen commitments from Anderson, commitment from Taylor. So where's Bryce Davis going to go? That's the big question these days. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, the way he's been recruited from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea, your guess is as good as mine. And he's got some time to think about it. But the way the defensive packages line up and they move him around, it's going to strain offensive
lines. He could be a linebacker, no doubt about it, in college. I mean, he could be a roving linebacker like you got Bryce Davis. He could be like a Lawrence Taylor kind of guy, moving around out there.
In the second half, and this was really telling, Andy, and this is something I think we're going to monitor as the season goes along. But in the second half, Grimsley could line up with just 3 down linemen. You put Bryce Davis out there, he was soaking up 2 offensive linemen. So now you got linebackers, you got a secondary. If you're going to try to throw to get back in the game and you're getting a pass rush from the Whirlies defense of just 3 guys, it's going to make it really, really challenging. He's flying all over the field, the different formations they put him in. He's a handful, no doubt about it.
Defensive back, see if he's still around. Frederick Sellers. Is Sellers still with him out there?
Absolutely.
He's an outstanding athlete. Seen his name for a couple of years, and he just keeps getting better and better and maturing and getting stronger as the things roll on.
He's a ball hawk. In fact, made an interception that was unfortunately overturned by a penalty to extend a Mount Tabor drive, but he made an incredible interception. Again, just his eyes reading the play. He's got that instinct to go after the ball, and a couple big breakups to go along with that as well. Unfortunately, that interception was nullified, but that just kind of shows you they're going to get a ton of turnovers on the defensive side this year if you're not putting balls right on the money. These cornerbacks can close, and they play with vision. They're really, really I guess that's the number one takeaway for me is how fast these Whirlies are.
How about the big lineman up front? Because he was at Kaiser Middle School a couple years ago. He kind of came after the other ones that have come and gone since then. What about this young kid up front? There's one guy who's really big up there.
Oh, that big old dude. That's Andre Hill Jr.
Andre, because I saw him back at Kaiser Middle. He's kind of falling in line with those big Grimsley linemen. Andre Hill Jr. has got to be the man because it's about his time to take over and dominate up front.
You go on the road, hot, muggy night, first game of the season, tons of emotion. You wonder about who's going to control that line of scrimmage. 14 tackles for loss for that Whirlies defensive line. They took over. I mean, they just took over, and it's anchored, like I said, Bryce Davis off the ends, and then Easton, the other defensive end, played fantastic. He was in the backfield all night, but you're not going to right at Big Old Hill Jr. You're
How much
just
does
not.
he weigh? Is he up to 330 now or bigger? About 330?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's not fitting inside my car. I can tell you that. He's a big old dude. He plays with a lot of
right
heart.
there with Travis Shaw as far as size goes. He has
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Right in that same category. Let's jump ahead. This week, Wake Forest Roseville comes to Jameson Stadium. They topped Butler 21-19 last week, and that's a Butler team coached by Brian Hales, one of the top coaches this entire state. So Roseville got a big win by 2 points over Butler. How tough is Roseville going to be, and how's Grimsley approaching the Roseville game, and how are they getting prepared for this?
Well, one of the things talking to Darryl Brown kind of post the Mount Tabor game is Grimsley wants to start a little bit faster. They just had 7 points in the first half of last week's game, so they want to get off to a little bit better start. Now, Roseville on the other side of the ball, they had 4 takeaways against Butler last week. They threw Butler threw 3 interceptions. One was in return for an interception. So you got a young quarterback and a ball hawk secondary in Roseville. You wonder how conservative the offense is going to be. The Whirlies offense is going to be going against, again, a very talented defense. And Roseville, one that is going to force turnovers. But I think looking ahead, is can the Roseville offense move the ball against this Grimsley defense? Because Roseville's offense just could not get anything going. When I went back and watched the game film, Roseville's offense just could not get anything going against Butler.
To win, but the offense was not clicking then.
The offense just wasn't clicking, and the defense did a great job.
Yeah,
those
defense
4
won the game for them then.
Defense won the game. 4 turnovers, set them up with short fields. Roseville, hey, you got a short field, they cash those in for touchdowns. So two touchdowns on short fields, throwing the pick 6, there's your 21 points. That ended up being the difference in the 21-19 win. So I'm concerned, Roseville, how they're going to get momentum on offense, and then, can the Whirlies defense continue to play at such speed and pace as they played against Mount Tabor?
Well, here's a big question. You and I discussed this earlier this week, kind of an off the, kind of outside the box question, kind of off the wall question, but it's important. Who is the Roseville coach these days? We ever find that out? Who their coach is?
We did. And you put me on the spot. I'll come up with the name here in just a second.
Definitely not Martin Semick. Semick is
No,
gone.
Semick's gone. They had to make an interim coaching change before the season. And it's a program, especially watching the film we have on them, they got a ton of talent, ranked 16th in the state polls, so they're going to play with a lot of talent, a lot of heart.
There's a lot of talent in that area, too, because you got Wake Forest High School, Heritage High School. It used to always be called Wake Forest Roseville. Now they're just singular Roseville, but there's been a ton of talent, and there's been some. Coach Reggie Lewis was a coach down at, I think, at Wake Forest for a good while. I had some state championship teams, so there's plenty of talent in that area, like you say.
Yeah, Atkinson can throw their quarterback. I again watched him on film, throws some pretty spirals. But the thing is, can this offensive line give him time to throw the football?
And plus, they're coming to Grimsley. Grimsley's home opener. Going to have those new lights installed. They got those lights going for them now. Every time a score takes place, they got the new disco lights going. So a lot of things happening at Grimsley, and I'm sure their fan base is going to pack the place. It should be a great night over there.
Yeah, they moved they moved the kickoff back to 8 p.m.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah,
and
Brian about that later too. Bryant Roach. Yeah.
Yeah, just because of the high heat. And talking to Grimsley's athletic director, I think with other schools here in Guilford County, you may see additional timeouts for water breaks as this game. So this game might have a little bit of a different feel, but the sun's going to go down, and when that happens, the stars come out.
It's almost like the All-Star game. No, it's played in July. It's very warm. They've always had it at 8 p.m. because they wanted to do that, to give it a chance to let that thing cool down a little bit before they put the kids on the field.
Key to this game, knowing that Roseville comes in with 3 interceptions and also a forced fumble, is to take care of the football for the Whirlies. Take care of the football, and then play good up front, control that line of scrimmage. Can they do that again like they did against Mount Tabor? Because by the fourth quarter, you could tell Mount Tabor was wore down. And Grimsley's both sides of the ball started to take over, started to force their will, and Grimsley ended the game on 2 consecutive touchdown scoring drives.
Give us a prediction. What's your prediction on the Grimsley game? Can you give us a prediction? I know you're picking them to win, of course. You're with them. But how about what's it going to be like score-wise? Any idea?
I do think it's a 2-score game. I think it'll be close, just because everybody's had a chance to play a game and get a better idea what their team's going to look like and make adjustments. For the Whirlies, I think it's 28. For Roseville, I think it's 14. It's just going to be tough sledding. Again, if Roseville doesn't make adjustments, and they couldn't move the ball at all against, they only had 123 yards of offense. So if Roseville doesn't get those short fields, complements a turnover, they're going to have to come up with some new or fresh plays. They're going to have to change something up on the offensive side. For the Whirlies defense, they just, I expect more of these exotic packages and moving Bryce Davis around and going nickel and 3-4s. And so it really poses a challenge for Roseville's offense. For the Whirlies offense, I wouldn't be surprised they start testing that run game and testing the Roseville defense out on the wings. You see Summers getting going. And then, of course, Brandon out of the backfield because he can run as well. He's a dual threat quarterback. They didn't really utilize him as a runner in this first game other than the short yardage rushing. That's why he came up with the two touchdowns. They were both on goal line carries. But you could see him out in space making plays with his legs in this game as well.
We have got to let him go. More about Grimsley Whirlies football coming up on Friday night at GrimsleySports.com for Mike Fanning. Mike, excellent job. Off to a good start. See you soon, and see you tomorrow night on the website.
All right. Thank you, friend.
Excellent work, Mike Fanning. We're going to go number 2 off the tee. But Bryant Roach is coming in next, so we'll give Bryant a chance to step in.